Welcome to WorldWire, the podcast that takes you beyond the headlines to explore the forces truly shaping our world today. We bring you thoughtful, in-depth analysis on global issues, from shifting power dynamics to economic alliances and everything in between.
Ever get that feeling like, the news just doesn't hit the same way it used to? Like something's a little off.
Yeah, I hear you. It's a feeling a lot of us share, that sort of unease about the whole media landscape, where we're even getting our news from.
Well, get ready to dive deep because that's exactly what we're doing today. We're exploring this growing sense that the media, the very source we depend on for information, is kind of losing its footing.
Interesting.
And we've got this awesome article from WorldWire as our guide, The Downfall of Mainstream Media. Part 1, The Erosion of Trust. Pretty catchy title, right?
Definitely grabs your attention.
Yeah, and the article doesn't waste any time getting to the point. It throws this bombshell stat at us right away. Turns out just a tiny group of massive corporations, the ones like Comcast, Disney, News Corp here in the US, even Reliance Industries over in India, are basically calling the shots for most of the media we consume.
Wild, right? It is pretty wild when you think about it. And that's where the trouble really starts. This whole lack of diverse ownership, it's not just some abstract corporate game, It directly shapes the stories we see, the perspectives we're exposed to, even the ones that get, silenced, really.
Yeah, it's like, would you trust just one company to tell you everything you need to know about the world? Probably not. Right.
Right. You wouldn't put all your trust in a single source.
Yeah.
And yet, that's kind of the situation we're in now with the media.
Totally. And it's not just about what they're choosing to tell us. It's also those potential conflicts of interest, right? I mean, these giant corporations, they have their fingers in so many pies, it makes you wonder.
Absolutely. The article highlights some examples from India, actually, where these conglomerates like Reliance Industries, they not only control a lot of major media outlets, but they also have these close ties to powerful political figures. So you can imagine the potential for bias, for stories being swept under the rug, for information being manipulated to serve specific agendas.
Makes you think twice about everything you read, doesn't it?
It certainly makes you more aware of the forces at play.
And this whole concentration of power thing, it makes me think about that decline of investigative journalism that the article mentions. Those deep dive reports that really dig deep and expose the truth, even if it makes, some powerful people uncomfortable.
Right. Investigative journalism, it's like the watchdog of a healthy society.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's a breed that seems to be, dwindling.
Yeah, the article points out that over 2,100 local newspapers in the U.S. alone have shut down since 2004.
Crazy, right?
It is a startling number. And, these local papers, they were often the ones really digging into local issues, holding local officials accountable. So who's going to fill that void now? That's the big question.
Yeah, it's a big void. It's like those communities have lost their eyes and ears, And here's another stat that just blew my mind. The article cites a Pew Research survey that found that a whopping 73% of Americans believe that news is more about entertainment than actual information these days. That statistic really speaks volumes about the state of our media landscape. It's not just about informing the public anymore. It's about, the pressure to generate clicks to keep audiences hooked, and that leads to this culture of sensationalism.
It's like this constant race for our attention, right?
Yeah.
And the loudest, most shocking stories are the ones that win.
Precisely. And this focus on grabbing eyeballs, it often comes at the cost of nuance, accuracy, and in-depth reporting. We're bombarded with these headlines that trigger our emotions, but how often do we actually stop and ask ourselves, is this really giving me the full picture?
I know I've been guilty of that, clicking on those attention-grabbing headlines, only to find out later that the story was way more complicated than it seemed at first.
It's a trap we all fall into, and it's a tactic that these digital media outlets, they've really mastered it.
Oh, and the article even uses this example from Brazil where, get this, despite a decrease in violent crime, a huge 80% of crime-related media coverage in 2022 was focused on violence.
It's a bit concerning, isn't it? This kind of skewed reporting, it directly shapes our perception of the world, even if it doesn't actually reflect reality.
That is a scary thought.
Yeah.
That our understanding of what's happening around us can be so easily manipulated. But the issue goes even deeper than that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're not just talking about misleading headlines. We're talking about this whole idea of bias and echo chambers.
Right, you're hitting on a key point there. It's a global phenomenon, really.
Yeah.
And this is where the digital world, it really complicates things.
Yeah.
We're all surrounded by these algorithms on social media and news websites, and they're designed to feed us content that aligns with our existing beliefs. So it creates these echo chambers where everyone just agrees with each other, you know?
So instead of expanding our worldview and considering different perspectives, we're just reinforcing our own biases.
Exactly. And the article mentioned the UK's Brexit coverage as a prime example of this.
Oh, right. I remember that. Wasn't it like, depending on which outlets people followed, they were presented with totally different narratives?
Exactly. It fueled so much division and confusion. And this isn't limited to just Brexit. It's happening on so many issues today, from climate change to social justice. It creates these parallel universes almost, where people can't even agree on basic facts.
It's wild. You know, this reminds me of something that happened to a friend of mine during the last election. She was totally convinced that a certain candidate had won because, well, all her social media feeds were just flooded with posts supporting that candidate.
Oh, wow.
And then when the actual results came in, she was completely shocked.
That's a perfect example of how these echo chambers can distort our perception of reality. We're constantly being nudged almost towards information that confirms our existing beliefs, and it makes it so much harder to discern truth from fiction.
And it's not just our own personal biases at play here, right? I mean, these media giants, they can use their platforms to push certain agendas, can't they?
Precisely. That's another layer to this whole issue.
Yeah.
The article dives into how this lack of diverse ownership, it can lead to a concentration of specific viewpoints, you know? It's like trying to understand the world while looking through a very narrow lens. You might see some things clearly, but you're missing the bigger picture.
And that's where things get really interesting.
Yeah, it's like we're all living in these custom filtered worlds, and the filters are being controlled by, well, forces we don't really fully understand.
And that brings us to this whole double-edged sword of social media, right? Like the article talks about how, on the one hand, it's given a voice to people and communities who are often just ignored by traditional media.
Oh, absolutely. Social media has been a powerful tool for social change, for raising awareness, for, holding power accountable. Think about the impact of citizen journalists during uprisings and protests around the world.
It's like having millions of eyes and ears on the ground, able to document events in real time. But then there's that other side of social media, the one that feels a bit like the Wild West when it comes to information.
Yeah, you're right. It's a space where, well, anyone can publish anything. And often the most outrageous or emotionally charged content is the stuff that rises to the top. It's the perfect breeding ground for misinformation and conspiracy theories.
And the article gives this chilling example of how false information about the 2020 U.S. election actually spread faster than verified facts on Facebook. I remember feeling so overwhelmed back then, trying to figure out what was real and what was, completely made up.
It was a wake-up call for a lot of us, I think. Social media has become this incredibly powerful tool for shaping public opinion, but it's a tool that can be easily manipulated, let's just say. And as the article points out, this isn't just a U.S. problem, it's global.
Yeah, like this digital wildfire of misinformation, right? Spreading across borders and continents in an instant. It's kind of scary, to be honest. And with so many people getting their news from social media these days, it's no wonder that that trust in traditional media has taken a hit.
It's a perfect storm, really. You have traditional media struggling to adapt to this rapidly changing digital landscape, while social media is amplifying the very forces that erode trust in information.
So where does that leave us? Are we just doomed to be lost in this sea of misinformation forever?
Well, I wouldn't say doomed, no. The article argues that the first step to navigating this complex landscape is awareness. Recognizing the forces at play, both within traditional media and on social media. That's crucial.
Okay, so awareness is key, but what do we do with that awareness? How do we actually become more discerning consumers of news? Give us some practical tips here.
Right. Well, that's where critical thinking comes in. We can't just passively absorb information anymore. We have to actively engage with it, question everything, especially when it's coming from sources that are known to be biased or unreliable.
It's like, become an information detective, carefully examining the evidence before forming an opinion. But honestly, it feels like I don't even know where to begin sometimes.
I understand that feeling. It could be overwhelming, to say the least. But remember, it's about quality over quantity. Focus on those sources that are known for accuracy, for fact-checking, for real commitment to journalistic ethics. And here's a tip. Diversify your media diet. Don't just rely on one news outlet or one social media platform.
So like expand our horizons a bit, get outside our comfort zones.
Exactly. It'll help you see the bigger picture.
I like that. But how do we even know what to trust? Are there any like red flags we should watch out for?
Well, absolutely. Be wary of sensationalized headlines, emotionally charged language, and a lack of supporting evidence or sources. Yeah. Look for sources that actually cite their information, that provide context, that are transparent about their biases even.
It's like you said earlier, question everything. Don't just take things at face value, even if it seems like, everyone else is believing it.
Exactly. And here's another important point. Be mindful of your own biases. Yeah. We all have them, and they can influence how we interpret information. So actively seek out diverse perspectives, even if they challenge your own beliefs.
It's about having those uncomfortable conversations, right? Like stepping outside our echo chambers and engaging with people who see the world differently.
Precisely. It's through those conversations that we can start to bridge divides, to find some common ground, and to build a more informed and understanding society.
Man, this conversation is really making me think about my own news consumption habits. I'm realizing I've been spending way too much time on social media lately, getting sucked into those echo chambers without even, realizing it.
Yeah, it's a trap that's easy to fall into.
Mm-hmm.
But the good news is that by being aware of these pitfalls, we can start to make more conscious choices about where we get our information from.
I totally agree. And this whole idea of conscious choice, it makes me think about the responsibility of mainstream media to adapt and evolve in this ever-changing landscape. After all, if they want to regain public trust, they can't just keep doing things the way they've always done them, right?
That's a crucial point. The WorldWire article actually dives into some strategies that traditional media outlets could adopt to better serve their audiences in the digital age.
Okay, let's unpack that. So what can these traditional outlets actually do to get back on track? It feels like they're always playing catch up with this whole internet thing.
It's a challenge, that's for sure. But the article, it suggests they need to get a little more creative. Think outside that old school newsroom box,
Okay, listening.
Well, for starters, they need to really embrace the power of digital storytelling.
Digital storytelling? What's that? Like news with emojis and cat videos?
Not quite. Think more like using multimedia elements, interactive graphics, even incorporating audience feedback to make the news more engaging, more relevant. Imagine watching a news segment and you can click on links for more information or explore interactive data visualizations, or even contribute your own perspectives.
Okay, and that sounds kind of cool, like taking the best parts of the internet, all that interactivity and customization, and using it to make news more accessible, more interesting.
Exactly.
But even with all the fancy digital bells and whistles, isn't the core issue still trust?
Well, absolutely. And that's where transparency comes in. Media outlets, they need to be more open about their funding sources, their editorial processes, even acknowledging their own biases. It's about showing their audience they have nothing to hide, that they're committed to journalistic integrity.
It's like that saying, right? Trust is earned, not given. And in this whole digital age where misinformation is everywhere, that transparency feels more important than ever.
I couldn't agree more. The article even suggests that traditional media could really benefit from collaborating more with fact-checking organizations, academic institutions, even citizen journalists. Imagine the possibilities if instead of competing for clicks, media outlets actually work together to amplify credible information, to combat misinformation.
Yeah, like a collective effort to raise the bar for quality journalism, recognizing that no single outlet has all the answers.
Yeah.
Wow. This whole deep dive has been really eye-opening. It's making me reconsider how I consume and even think about news, really. It's not just about blindly trusting any one source. It's about becoming more aware, more critical, more engaged.
And that's really the ultimate takeaway, isn't it? We, the consumers of information, we hold a lot of power.
Yeah.
By demanding better from our media sources, by being more discerning and engaged, we can help shape a more a more responsible and trustworthy information landscape.
So well said. It's actually a bit empowering, to realize that we're not just passive recipients of whatever information is thrown our way. We have a voice, and we can use it to demand better, to hold those in power accountable, and to ultimately make more informed decisions about the world around us.
It all circles back to that question we posed earlier, right? Who do we trust and why? Now that we've explored these complex forces that are shaping the media landscape, hopefully that question feels a little less daunting and a lot more empowering.
This has been an amazing deep dive. I know I'm walking away with a whole new perspective on the news, and I hope our listener is too. Thanks for joining us on this journey, for sharing your insights and helping us all become more informed and empowered citizens.
It's been a pleasure. And remember, the conversation doesn't end here. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep demanding better from the sources you rely on.
Until next time, stay curious, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to WorldWire. We hope today's episode gave you new insights and a fresh perspective on global events. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe and share. Help us reach more listeners who care about unbiased, in-depth analysis. At WorldWire, we believe in looking beyond the headlines. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep questioning the world around you.